Okay. Okay. I completed my season of seeking meaning and purpose of my life. And looking back now, I can see when it transitioned from seeking meaning and purpose to asking for more. 1997, 98. So at the end of 1997, it culminated with a real high in my life and in my career. At that point in time, with 33 years in my career with Procter & Gamble, and I received a number of incredible awards that demonstrated the success model. It was, I received a Gold Club award, my ring that I still wear to this day, that I received from my company, saying I was in the top 2% of the people doing the work, the classification, the role, the job that I did as a middle manager. And then right after that, I received the Presidential Award for being the best in the company in the role that I did. And went to Cincinnati, presentation with a lot of other people who were receiving the same thing. And my team also received the Presidential Award for being the top of the heap of all of the customer teams. And so that was really a high. Not only that, my boss phoned me on the phone and offered me a position to move to Asia and to be a manager of Asia. That was so exciting and at this opportunity, but I wanted my wife to go with me, of course, and we needed to be together on the journey, and she decided that that was not what she wanted to do. And so I had to turn that job down. And I loved the work I was doing already, working with Costco, the second largest customer of Procter & Gamble in the world. And I loved the people I worked with on my team, and I loved my customer and the people that I worked with, both at the executive level and even the truck drivers and the pallet jack movers. And I traveled a lot all over North America working to help Procter & Gamble and Costco together as partners to improve the systems of how to move trucks and data and to be able to be more efficient and more effective. And so I loved the work I was doing. So I went, and it was just a couple of weeks after my wife and I came to the conclusion that we were not going to move to Hong Kong. And I was into doing the thing that I loved, and I was on a trip to San Diego and then to Phoenix, and in between San Diego and Phoenix, I stopped overnight to visit my parents in Yuma, Arizona. And I was fulfilling a commitment that I'd made to myself that I was going to write my mom and dad at least once a month, and I'd been doing that for 10 years, and visiting them at least every 3 months. And I'd been doing that for, again, almost 10 years. And so I fit that into my schedule so that between San Diego and Phoenix, I stopped and visited Mom and Dad. And here comes a turning point that moves me from seeking meaning and purpose to asking for help. And it was, while I was visiting my parents, I was out on an early morning run. Yuma, Arizona can get very hot as one of the very hot spots in North America. February 23rd in Yuma, Arizona, you would think in Seattle, it's cold and rainy and wet. And so I traveled from here. I'm there, and at 4:30 in the morning when I go out on a run, it's in the 70s. It's going to get up to 80 plus degrees that day. So I am out on this run. I'm over an hour being running, and I'm praying, and I'm praying to an unknown God, because I'd been studying yoga, I'd been studying the Hindu religion, I'd been studying Zen and Buddha, and I was on this run, and I was just praying to an unknown God and asking for direction and meaning. And I'm coming back down this dirt road with a canal alongside of me. Yuma is there's a lot of agriculture there, and so I'm in this area where there's lots of vegetation going on, and the irrigation coming from these canals. So I'm running down this canal, jogging really, when all of a sudden, out of me, and I don't know if it was out of my mouth, it was loud in my head at least, came these words: I surrender to you, my Lord, my God. I surrender my ego, my will, and my life to you. Please guide and direct me today, and I will follow you. As those words came out of my mouth, I was kind of shocked at where was this coming from? How did this happen? And as I reflected on that, I started to slow down, and I realized I had just sprinted. I was jogging. When I said, I surrender to you, my Lord, my God, I had gone into a sprint, and I was running fast. And I said to myself, I received power. That was so amazing that it was like I have been living my life all these years like Atlas, carrying the world on my shoulders like this. And once I surrendered my life to God, it was like the weight of the world was gone, and I was free, and I received this power, and I was just running like a 4-minute mile, although I hadn't run a mile, but it was an experience that was transformational to me, that as I finished my run and got back to my parents' mobile home in Yuma and took a shower that morning, I said to myself, I am going to say this every day the rest of my life. I feel strong. I feel free. Once I gave my life to God and asked God to guide and direct me, and I will follow you. Wow. What an experience that I had when I asked and I received power. Life went on, and I said that every day, and I have, as a matter of fact, said that every day since February 23rd, 1998. It was almost 6 months later, it was July 2nd, of that same year, I had my second spiritual awakening, spiritual experience in the same exact place. Again, I was on a business trip, and I went to the San Diego region buying office and visited with them, and I was headed to the distribution center in Phoenix, Arizona, stopped and visited Mom and Dad, and I was on a run again. And on the run that day, what was heavy on my heart was Jean, my friend, my closest, dearest friend, who I had just visited in Virginia Mason Hospital here in Seattle just before I got on the plane to fly to San Diego. I had visited Gene in the hospital. He had multiple myeloma and had been on a downward slide with this disease for 3 years. And when he was diagnosed, 3 years in 1995, 3 years earlier, he was told that he would only live 3 years. When I visited him that day in the hospital, he was white as a sheet. He was laying flat out on the bed. He looked terrible, and he was playing with a rock. You remember pet rocks? Well, he had this little rock that was shiny and smooth. And I said, "What are you doing, Gene?" And he said, "Ray, I'm glad you asked." And he went and lifted up the rock and pointed. The bottom of the rock had a piece of paper taped on it, and there were 4 names. And mine was the second name on that rock. And I said, "What is that, Gene?" And he said, "I'm planning my life celebration. The end is near, and I want you to speak at my service." And I said, "Oh, Gene, come on, you can make it." I tried to encourage him. We spent a few minutes together, and then another friend was coming in, and I left. I needed to get to the airport to go on my trip. So on this morning, the next day, I am running, and I have again run for about an hour with a heavy heart, and I asked a question. God, what can I do for Gene? And I heard clearly as anything, this little voice in the back of my head said, "Join Rotary." And I went, "What? Is that you, God? Join Rotary." Yes. Gene has asked me to join the Rotary Club on Mercer Island many, many times, but it's been several years since he's done that because he's been sick. And I told him every time, "I can't go to lunch on Tuesday, Gene. I travel. And I work in the office typically on Monday and Friday, and I'm traveling during the week, so I know I can't do that." But now, God, if you're telling me to join Rotary, I think I need to do that. And I have enough influence in my work and in my job. I can do what I want when I want. And so I can arrange my travel. I can join Rotary. So I came back, and through the counsel of another friend who was in Rotary and had just been the president that year, that was a dear friend of mine and of Gene's, said, "Ray, you need to go tell Gene that story." So I went to the hospital, and I saw Gene in the same position, in the same mood, the same circumstances that I had had earlier that week. And I told him the story. And immediately he raised up out of bed and he looked at me and he said, "You be here on Tuesday, we're going to Rotary." And this was on Friday afternoon. "You be here at 11:30 at Tuesday, we're going to Rotary." And I said, "Gene, how are we going to do that? How are you going to get out of the hospital?" And he says, "Ray, you leave that to me. Your job, be here, 11:30 on Tuesday." So I came back the next Tuesday, picked him up, and we went to Rotary, and the rest is history. He introduced me, and then after that week, the club had this process. I needed to go and Gene explained the whole thing to me. I needed to go for 3 weeks in a row, and I needed to go through a meeting and a regular process before I could become a member. And Frank, my other friend, who had been the president the previous year, talked to the board and said, "We need to railroad Ray through as fast as possible because we all know Gene's going to die. And we need to get Ray through Rotary." And so Gene and I went to Rotary the next 3 weeks, and I was inducted into Mercer Island Rotary July 28th, 1998, with Gene standing up and introducing me and giving a story of me. And then we went to Rotary together for another 3 weeks before he was released from the hospital, came home, and lived 3 more years playing golf with his children, having quality life for over 2 years. He had this revival in his life, all because God knew that he had a purpose for him to fulfill, and used little old me to tell Gene that God told me to join Rotary. So it wasn't until April 2nd, 2001 that Gene died. And what a glorious memorial service at St. Teresa's Church in Seattle, where Gene and Iris had belonged for 15, 20 years, and long-term Catholic committed family, and surrounded by hundreds of friends to celebrate Gene's life. Second spiritual experience. Number 3 came 6 months later when I had surgery on my foot. Hallus rigidus is big toe. Rigidus, you can figure that out. And so this was my second surgery of hallus rigidus. I'd had surgery on my right foot 7 years earlier, and it had been successful in having my toe become more flexible and reducing the pain and making running much more easy. So I decided to do the left foot. So this story was when I'd met with the surgeon, and then I was going into surgery. They prepared me in advance, so I had about an hour at the hospital, and then I'm in the surgery room. It's dark, and I am just waiting for the surgeon to come. And then I suddenly feel a hand touch me on the shoulder, comes up to my neck, and then to the top of my head. And as this hand is on me, I feel peace come over me. An incredible peace came over me. I'd already been told that I wasn't going to receive anesthesia for this surgery on my foot. They were only going to use local anesthetics. And I said to myself, wow, I don't need any anesthesia. I am just very comfortable and in peace. They had the surgery, and after the surgery, into recovery. And it was 2 weeks later, in the follow-up with Dr. Newell, my surgeon, that I had the follow-up appointment with him. And I am sitting up on a bench, and he's down on his knees with my foot in his hand. And he's examining my toe and my foot. And I decide I'm going to tell him, I actually have been anxious to tell him the story of what happened when he came in the room and put his hand on me. And I tell him that story. I knew it was the surgeon that had done that. And so I tell him this story, and he looks up, kneeling, and looks up at me, and tears are streaming out of Stan's eyes. And psalms are pouring out of his mouth. And he tells me how he was praying for me that morning, and even repeats a prayer that was a psalm, and starts to tell me about the love of God, and asked me if I would be interested in learning more. And so he became a mentor in my life and began to disciple me on my journey. So these are 3 stories that happened from February of 1998 to February 1st was my surgery in 1999, when God was working in me to draw himself, to draw me to himself. 22 minutes?